All right, everybody. I'm here with William Pullin. Now, William, what got you started in all of this? The field of the weird. I also know that you touch on zoology and stuff like that, which I also find quite interesting. But what got you started?
In the mid '70s, I started reading all these UFO magazines. There was, I'm drawing a blank here now, we're on the air. There were about 4 or 5 UFO magazines in print in the '70s. It was a big deal. And you could walk into an HEB, the local grocery stores, and buy them. And, I was a little kid, I would devour all that stuff. And then by the early '80s, all those magazines went away. They all, I guess, went defunct or whatever. So by the early '80s, I became a member of APRO, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, run by Jim and Cora Lorenzen, and started hearing their APRO bulletins and learning more about the UFO issue. And then they both passed away in the late '80s, and APRO, went away. And after that, I started doing my own research and buying books, buying journals, going to conferences, just learning everything about the field. And as time went on, it just kind of blossomed. But it was always a fascination, not really with sci-fi, but the idea that there might be some life other than what's on Earth. So kind of a childhood thing, and now it's like almost an obsession, I guess. So
I'm actually right there with you on that. I feel you completely.
nice, yeah. And the cryptozoology stuff is I've always been interested in science, but it's a recent thing because the UFO field has become very polarized now. I'm getting a lot of pushback in the field. A skeptical point of view is not popular. So I'm kind of pushed away from the UFO community. I write about it. I'm still involved in research, but I write a little more about science and ancient species and the earth and, just to be more diverse. I'm kind of done with the UFO thing each and every day, but it's still an interest of mine. But, when you come across enough negativity in the field, you kind of want to like give it a break every so often. And that's where I'm at right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too. I've had to take quite a few breaks just for my podcast, but
Yeah.
I don't think you're saying, and you might be, and that's fine. Are you saying you don't believe in UFOs or that you're skeptical of a lot of the claims that come out?
The latter.
The
Yeah,
latter.
I firmly believe there's something going on in the skies above our heads. There's enough testimonials out there to suggest there's some bizarre activity going out there, some of which might be extraterrestrial. Um, so I firmly believe in that. I think alien visitation has occurred on a few rare occasions. I don't think it's as common as what you see online. Um, However, any field investigator, whether it was Mufon or NatCap or APRO, anyone worth their weight in gold will tell you that 90% of these cases are explained by bugs on a windshield or a balloon or a lightning bolt or misidentified helicopter. So most sightings are mundane. It's the small percentage that escape explanation, and a small percentage of those are really bizarre. And so those are the ones But overall, I think you have to be skeptical because the majority of cases are explained by everyday things that are misidentified. So um, I think it speaks volumes. That not to be sound too negative, but MUFON every year gets hundreds of cases of people reporting bugs on their own windshield as a UFO. The windshield is 18 inches away. If you can't recognize a bug on your windshield, then how can we take that person's ability to observe their environment at a high level? If they can't identify a bug, then how can I identify a light in the sky? Putting that aside, I still think we've been visited, but it has to be a measured approach. So I guess that's a long answer for your question, though. I apologize.
No, absolutely. I'm fine with those long-winded answers because I'm actually right there with you. It's not that I don't think something's going on. I just don't think it's going on to the level that people are saying it is. So,
Yeah,
as an
yeah.
example, and this is going to piss some people off, the Skinwalker Ranch stuff, right? Before we even touch on MUFON, that's too much for people to tell me that there's dog men standing out there smoking cigarettes. I think George Knapp was one who reported that.
Yeah.
In correlation to a UFO and all of that weird stuff going on, I need some kind of evidence for it. See, that's what I like about you is you take more of a Kevin Randall approach to things.
Oh yeah.
Something
He's
is
the
going
man.
on, but
Yeah.
let's take a step back and be a little skeptical of it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
like, as you know, I'm big into alien abductions.
Sure.
I think there
Yeah.
might be some very legitimate cases, but I also know that not all of them are, and many can be mistaken.
Yeah.
I've had very lucid dreams that would imply that I've had abduction experiences. But you know what? I can go back and look at that and realize, hey, that was a sleep paralysis experience. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
It doesn't run within my family, things like that. I push that skeptical thing too because it's needed.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, the observational skills of the average person are they're not to a high level. A grounded look at it would be like you're a traffic policeman. You will drive up to a traffic light where there's been a wreck. You interview 5 different people. The wreck just happened 10 minutes prior. Those 5 individuals will give you 5 distinctly different descriptions of the driver, 5 different descriptions of the cars that were involved. How is that possible? If they're that keen of an observer, then they should have relatively the same description of what transpired. You don't get that. Invariably, I guess a good way to look at it in the UFO field is that if people were that skilled at observing their environment, there would not be all these reports of balloons, helicopters, drones, bugs in a windshield. People wouldn't misidentify things so often, but they do. Um, but having said that, like you said, and I agree, you have to have a skeptical eye because the majority of this stuff is misidentifications or mundane phenomenon. If we can push that aside and explain that, it leaves you with a core of really anomalous, thought-provoking cases that suggest some bizarre activity, potentially extraterrestrial. But to get to there, it's like a needle in a haystack. Once you get that needle, it speaks volumes, but you got to get through this whole sea of nonsense. And that's not saying rarely do people lie. Hoaxes are not that common. It's just they're not really keen observers. That's just being honest. But for every person that misidentifies someone, or actually for every 100 that misidentifies something, there's 1 or 2 that see something that's really out of the ordinary, and that's worth the time to find those. So we're in the same boat, the Kevin Randall School of Ufology. I like to put it. So yeah, yeah.
That
Yep.
is the one thing I really appreciate about him is he doesn't mind going after these cases in that way, and neither do you, which is why once I stumbled upon you, that's why I share so much on my Facebook, is because this guy's
Yeah.
actually doing good research and he's calling out people who might not necessarily be, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
There's for every person like a John Greenwald. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but like you and I, that like a Kevin Randall, like a David Marler, a Jan Aldrich, people that are not overly well known. For every person that's skeptical and is cautious and has been doing a step-by-step process and looking at all the information before declaring it's alien or whatever, for every one person of that ilk, there's 10 or 20 of these people that just believe everything. And any story that comes down the block. And that's not wise. I mean, it just isn't. And it makes the whole field look pseudoscientific. I guess that's the word to use. Yeah. But being skeptical is not popular nowadays. And I guess that's a segue to move on, really, but that's a segue to everything.
it is. And, you know, what's really odd is I started out probably 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. I just kind of fell into it. I started out as the guy who kind of bought into everything. I would listen to thousands of interviews for podcasts. I worked in a warehouse, so I had the time. I worked overnight. So
Yeah.
I'd just listen to thousands of podcasts. And I'd get pulled from right here all the way over to here. So maybe they're extraterrestrial, maybe they're interdimensional, maybe they're this, maybe they're that. And then I'll find inconsistencies. And then over time, I started to get a little more skeptical. Okay, so that guy got busted lying. Okay, that guy got arrested. Okay, this guy, that. And then you realize, okay, that case was proven fake, but this guy's still pushing it. So I obviously need to be a little more skeptical.
Yeah, that's just wise. I mean, there are cases out there that have been proven to be hoaxed on multiple occasions. My mind immediately goes to Aztec. That story originates with two guys that were convicted of fraud in federal court. To my mind, that makes them unbelievable. I don't want to hear anything out of their mouth. So beyond those two convicted felons, there are no other witnesses. No one firsthand. It's all about the story coming from these two criminals. Call me strange, but I don't believe fraudsters. Someone lies to me, I tend not to believe them. Maybe that's weird, but that's me. So, and yet these cases have a life of their own. They're legendary. Despite having been disproven on multiple occasions, they live on, which is to the detriment of other cases that may hold a lot of water. I mean, everyone's paying attention to, and no offense to these classic cases, but Roswell, Socorro, Rendlesham Forest, all important cornerstone cases. They're important, but if we spend all our time on those 80-year-old cases, how many multiple witness, robust, bizarre cases are falling through the cracks we've never even heard of? Because everyone's looking at Roswell or Socorro. They're looking somewhere else instead of looking right in front of them. That's part of the problem in the UFO field. It's the same 10 or 12 cases that are talked about ad nauseum. And there's other stuff that's unexplained, that's unexamined, and no one looks at it. And I wonder what the witnesses in those cases feel like. I mean, if I saw a UFO, which I never have, but if I was part of a case and I saw a UFO and no one wanted to hear my case because they're paying attention to whatever else, I'd feel like, why did I even speak up? It's the field is a little bit of a mess nowadays, and I hope it changes at some point. But it takes, like I said, a skeptical, cautious approach is the way a law enforcement official would look at a case, or an attorney, or a doctor, or a surgeon, or a scientist. Why is it different here? I don't know. It should be different, but it is.
Well,
Sorry, yeah.
I wish people would do exactly what you said. So instead of taking those old cases, like this is an issue I've noticed, they'll take those older cases and try to corroborate another case that they're looking at with that very case. So they'll take something like radiation found at Roswell as an example. I don't even think that happened, but let's just say they found something at the Delphos site. They'll look at a new case and just bring it right back to Delphos. They'll say, like, this colors what I'm looking at now, when it might not even be legitimate. That's a big issue I've noticed as well.
Yeah, but yeah, agreed. It does. They have a new case and they draw an analogy with an older case, and I'm fine with that. If I was looking at a case, say it happened this year, I might state that we have multiple witnesses, like at Socorro back in '64, with physical evidence. That's interesting. That would be the end of it. I'd make a quick reference to a historical case, but I wouldn't spend my time on that historical case. It's good to draw an analogy, but just for the short term. And then you take your attention back to the present day and examine what just happened. Because obviously a case that happened within the last 10 years is a lot more viable. You have a better opportunity to find more evidence from a recent event rather than something that happened almost a century ago. I mean, when all your witnesses are dead and there's no documentation, no physical evidence, well, then what do you got? Well, you got his stories, and that's not good enough. But a recent case, you can visit the site. There might be physical evidence there. You might find documentation. It's the witnesses are alive. I mean, that's a big deal. It's hard to interview people once they passed on. So, but yeah, right in the field, they do draw analogies, and they end up ignoring the new case, and it ends up going back to Roswell or going back to Socorro or wherever. It's the same old story, and it's the same old tired stories over and over and over. And If I was a witness, I would be disgusted by it. But that's just me. Um, Having never seen a UFO in my life, I've never seen anything I couldn't identify. So I have this point of view of like all my points of view are gained from witnesses because I
Exactly.
have none of my own. My wife Venus is the opposite. She's skeptical, but she's witnessed things she can identify. She's just not sure they're anomalous, which I've never heard of a skeptical witness until I met her. Um, but yeah, our approach is similar. That we need to take a skeptical, reasonable look and ignore things that are so old they have no bearing nowadays. Really, they really don't.
Exactly. We just have to take a step back. And people, another issue I've noticed nowadays is, and there might be something to it, but there's the big woo factor. So,
Oh goodness gracious!
oh
Yeah,
man. See, so in one of my podcasts, I covered an old video from the 1990s. It was an alleged video of a person who worked at a gas station or something, and a bright flash of light came. Video cut out for 2 hours, turns back on. The guy's on all fours, puking on the ground, and then stumbles away. People jumped right on the abduction route with that. Now, they
yeah.
also received a letter where the person was wanting $2,500 for the video and still kept pushing the abduction button. So I go through the comments of the video, and man, it was crazy. Now, from what I just told you, we don't have enough to go on and say a person was abducted.
No, no.
But everybody jumped on that bandwagon, and there was one crazy comment that I still will never forget.
Uh-oh.
The person had left his body for 2 hours, came back down, and he didn't realize. You see, that right there complicates the UFO field big time. Because then
Yeah.
we have, at what point do we stop having physical evidence and we just have people's claims like that?
I think that started in the 50s with the contactees, the George Adamski types, where people just came out of the woodwork and said they went to Venus and they visited busty blonde women who ruled the planet and whatnot, and just rhetoric stories with no physical evidence at all, but they were believed. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know where that comes from. It's They skipped the first step. They skipped the confirmation. I mean, you get a case on your desk. The first thing you do, you don't investigate the case. You investigate whether something's happened at all. Did an event actually happen? And then you take the next step. And yeah, I'm with you. I've seen videos of abductions or alleged abductions, or even this recent David Grush informant information. People are saying, well, he told the higher ups behind closed doors the names of these people that saw these ships or whatever. Well, how do you know that? You weren't at the meeting. How would you possibly? You're a civilian. How do you know that? Well, he did. What? How do you know that? Again, they jump to declarations that make no sense whatsoever. Um, it's a faith based belief structure, almost like a religion, to in a certain way, and people do it all the time. So I feel your pain. Any wooey post about an abduction or that kind of case, you see comments left and right that are just way out there.
Yeah.
And that says a lot because we're talking about UFOs, which is already way out there. And they're even more so. The woo is a huge problem in the field. I think more so than Mufon. It really is. It's the biggest issue we have. You know, people believe things that just aren't true.
And you know what? Let's touch on Mufon.
Oh no.
So, so I know you've had some issues with Mufon as well as I. What would you like to say about Mufon?
Um, Mufon started as um, it was a breakaway from APRO. Mufon did not organize itself of its own accord. It was a mutiny from a. It was a chapter of APRO. It was the Midwest chapter of APRO that broke off and I can't recall the gentleman's name.
Walter
The first director of
Andrus.
Mufon, it was I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a blank for some reason. My brain is slush anyway, my age. But the first director of Mufon was that chapter director for APRO. He stole the membership list of his chapter and contacted everybody and formed his own group. They broke off from APRO. So MUFON formed from less than ideal circumstances. After that, they developed and grew, and they had legitimate investigations. They were a legitimate organization until about the mid '90s. Then they started to change. APRO NICAP folded in 1980, if memory serves. APRO folded in '88. After a few years of being the only play in town, the only horse in the race, MUFON became more. They morphed into what they are now, which is a entertainment business, not investigations. They're all about selling T-shirts, memberships, whatnot, and it is what it is. But you can't then profess to be focused on a scientific examination of UFOs. They're not. They're about selling memberships and T-shirts.
Yes,
They've changed. They're not. They've changed, and that's beyond the personal issues I have with them. That's just a objective observation. I can go on and name names about the personal interactions I've had, which have been negative, but that's not important to the bigger picture. But that the UFO field is lacking a major organization to investigate cases because MUFON's not doing them.
No.
And MUFORG is just a storehouse. They're not investigative. So, you know.
Well, so working on the stuff I tried to get in touch with my local MUFON to try to get some kind of case files, any documents. And I asked them, and I know I've touched on this before, but I asked them, okay, do I have to join MUFON in order to get a hold of some of these case files? So like older stuff, even just the reports.
Yeah.
I was met with no response. After about 2 or 3 months, I called up like the head MUFON. I found it online. You can Google it and you can find their main phone number. I called them up and I asked, hey, how do I get a hold of case files? And I talked to a woman and she had no clue what the hell I was talking about. I was a little baffled because I'm at work in my car making a phone call and I kind of went like, I'm sorry, you don't know what case files are?
That's troubling. Yeah. Yeah.
So she put me in touch with Bob Spearing, and he tried to send me to the AFU, which is a Swedish, archive.
Yeah.
At least he did something. I will give him credit for that. He did something to get me somewhere.
Yeah.
But still, there was no response from even my local MUFON, and I considered joining them at one point. And we had a big issue. I'm not even going to go into that. It just turned me completely off of doing it. Like, I can do this research myself by going to people like David Marler. He has an archive and he's done the most work for me. I cannot give David Marler enough praise for that.
He's outstanding. Yeah. I feel your pain. Yeah. I can't tell you how many witnesses that I've come across that I end up interviewing. They give me their information and I write up a case file on them. I can't investigate it because I'm based in San Antonio. I can't travel around the country at my leisure. But invariably, they come to me or they stumble into me because they contacted MUFON and MUFON didn't follow through. They didn't contact them back. I mean, how hard is that? Return email, return a call. There's some disconnect there. There's some level of unprofessionalism for some reason. I don't know why it's feeling like that. I used to be affiliated with running a UFO festival here in San Antonio. That ended badly last year for circumstances that are not the topic of today's program. But I emailed the local chapter here in San Antonio and asked them, would you like to be part of the festival? Logical. There's a UFO festival in your town. The local MUFON chapter should be involved in that event. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
No response. Not even a no, or not even we're not interested, or we have another scheduled event or whatever. No response at all. As if I didn't send one. How rude.
It,
I
it
mean, if my worst enemy sent me an email, I'd still return his email. May not be nice, but I'd give him the common courtesy. I mean, but no
absolutely,
response at all.
it's common courtesy.
Yeah, so that's what's happening here. I don't know why. Here in San Antonio, here in Texas, the local movement chapters, they run their meetings. You have to RSVP. If you don't RSVP, you're not allowed in. You can't just show up. You pay a $5 fee. No one underage is allowed, and you cannot take pictures or take video during the meeting. That seems very secretive to me. And
Yeah.
yet they state they're family friendly and all welcoming. Well, if you were, you let everyone in. You let people advertise your events by taking pictures and posting them online. They allow none of that, which to my mind is the opposite. Very secretive, very controlling. They don't want negative press. They want to control the narrative. As to why that is, your guess as good as mine. I'm they're Mufon is not crazy about me, to say the least, but not for personal reasons. I mean, it's ridiculous that an organization runs itself like that. It's very amateurish. It should be the opposite, but it isn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I invited on, my local head chapter lady, right, for the whole state.
Yeah.
I did an interview with her. She responded immediately that day. So I had discussed with her, okay, I'm probably not going to I'm going to record it on Zoom. I'm going to do the video, but I'm probably just going to do the audio. Is that fine? She said, okay. Well, I thought to myself, I kind of want to put it on YouTube. So I messaged her back eventually after we had done it. And I said, I kind of want to put this on YouTube. Would that be okay? She could have just said no. That would have been fine with me.
Sure.
No response. And it's been over a year now. They have an issue with getting back to people, and I find that ridiculous.
I don't know why that would be. It's so easy to return texts and emails. Everyone has a screen in their pocket. I mean, how hard is it to return a text or an email? I mean, I don't know where that disconnect started. The last quality director of the organization was James. What was the last name? James Carrion, mid-90s. Yeah, I think he was based out of Colorado, memory serves. After he resigned or left the organization, it's been going generally downhill since then. And I had many friends that were lifelong members of Mufon. They've left. I mean, the list is long. I mean, James Clarkson, Robert Powell, Rich Hoffman. These guys were in Mufon almost longer than I've been alive, and they all left because of the issues within the organization. Some are still benefactors, for some reason, but and going back to all the way back to your issue about getting case files, I've gotten both answers. I've asked people involved in Mufon, do I have to be a member to gain access to your files? Some tell me yes, some tell me no. Okay, so which is it? I don't get that. I don't know.
That is just ridiculous. So how is anybody supposed to actually research the phenomenon if you can't go back and look at other cases unless you're looking at other people's books?
You can. I mean, there's no way to examine a problem without examining the data. All of it, not some of it.
Yeah, and
but
that's
Mufon is not going to release their stuff now. Yeah.
Like the case that I've been working on, that 1978 case of Louise Smith. I get that gets very repetitive for me to keep saying, but that 1978 abduction, 76. I go over multiple books. I've got one right here.
There you go.
Usually a 3-page write-up, and they've got the facts wrong compared to what I see from like Bob Pratt, who I've got. David Marler sent me the Bob Pratt files, 96 pages. So I had them turned into a hardcover book so that I can now have this, not just at my computer and my phone. I can now go through, highlight stuff, and look at it. When I go through all of these books, I find out that they leave one piece out, as well as interviews and things that cover the case. Kufos, Mufon, and APRO all looked at that case. Mufon and Kufos showed up first. Apro showed up the next day and were met with these women not letting them in and talking to them, as well as a bunch of trash talking and drama, because Mufon and Kufos had issues and they wanted the big scoop on the tail.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you go through the APRO bulletin, I have found that one. I've actually got it framed up right here.
Beautiful.
I found that to be the most accurate on that case, because right there, it talks about the drama that was caused because of it. And they were told by the women that somebody, I'm not going to say any names, Jerry Black, started a bunch of drama saying that they shouldn't talk to them because they're going to sell it to the National Enquirer. Do you know who wound up selling it to the National Enquirer? Jerry Black. The very guy who was trying to warn the women about it. I find it extremely interesting, and as far back then, you see those kind of issues, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. That has nothing to do with investigations. Nothing to do with it.
None.
I have found that the most accurate, you know, in that time period that NAPRO, APRO, NICAP, MUFON, and SUBOS were all kind of active at the same time, like 1970 to 1980. That the most accurate chroniclers of the actual data with these cases tends to be APRO. MUFON, okay, SUBOS, a little better. NICAP around the same standard, but APRO usually is on top. They're usually more accurate. An example I bring up is like the book Above Top Secret from Timothy Good. He profiles a case from the 60s that involved an unidentified aircraft. The way he wrote it, it sounded like unidentified flying object. And I referred to the case, it appeared in, the original case appeared originally in the book, I believe it's Flying Saucer Occupants, written by Cora Lorenzen. And that case is profiled. She says nothing about a UFO. It's an unidentified aircraft, a terrestrial aircraft, which is distinctly different than an unidentified flying object. But Good didn't transcribe the case accurately. So you wonder how often that happens, that with time, accuracy wavers because authors don't transcribe information completely accurately. And so a story we read now has morphed from what it originally was. But APRO seemed more in tune with accuracy, but now they're gone. So now we're stuck with MUFON. And now we can't even get access to their files. I mean, I'm kind of surprised David Marler is still part of MUFON, but he is a legitimate, solid researcher. So he's pretty independent in my book. So he's one of the best. So.
Well, we're going to cut to a break real quick, and we will be right back. All right, we're back now. So what would be considered good evidence to you of a UFO experience? Let's pick up there.
This won't be popular in the UFO field, but from a scientific standpoint, anecdotal evidence is the weakest form of evidence. It just is. Memories change. The human brain is not an objective recorder of data. It isn't. Having said that, firsthand testimony, I'm okay with that. Multiple witnesses that are all firsthand, that's great, especially if they're in different geographical locations. They don't know each other. They saw the same thing from several locations in, say, Illinois or Texas. Outstanding. They can gather some video evidence, even photographs of the same object from different locations. Great. Radar traces, outstanding. Landing traces, impressions, radiation, burn marks, that at least confirms an event took place. It may not get you to where you want to go, because it seems like everybody wants ET, but at least you can confirm, okay, this is not a hoax, an event actually took place, which is the first step. You know, you see, I guess Socorro, they found landing traces. Okay, that confirms an event took place. Lyons de Moore did not make that up. That's great, that's the first step. Second step, what was the cause? And when you get to it, I guess overall, multiple chains of evidence would be great. And as you go up the chain of the ladder, when you move into military interactions, then you enter the realm of documentation. Is there official documentation to confirm the testimony? But beyond that, I really don't accept anything else. Secondhand testimony, hearsay, no, I don't. In my private life, working as a tennis coach, several clients of mine are attorneys, and I asked them, and they all knew who I was addressing. They said, "Oh, the UFO guy." I go, "Yeah." I said, "What is the definition of hearsay?" And to a man, they all said, "Secondhand testimony." Well, I don't accept that. It's a high standard, but every other field has high standards. Law enforcement, physics, the sciences, archaeology, you name it, medicine, there's all high standards of investigation, but not in this field. This field, there's no standards. There should be, but there aren't. So, but in the UFO field, everyone's believed. So the standard is very, very low in this field.
It is, and it's very unfortunate because let me go into what I believe about all of this. So something anomalous is happening. I think there's very good evidence for that.
Agreed.
What I don't do, and I used to be horrible at this, right? I used to be the ETH guy. I would jump right on the bandwagon. I now kind of draw no conclusion on that. I'm okay saying I don't know and that I don't have to jump to the ETH. It very well could be.
Sure.
But I'm not sure. And I'm not even sure how to prove that. So what I can do is I can just say, okay, there's a core phenomenon, step back. I don't draw any conclusions on what it is. The conclusion part is where people have big issues. I used to be real bad at debating whether it's a demon or an interdimensional being, whether it's an extraterrestrial or a robot.
Yeah.
Let's prove the core phenomenon first, or what's going on. Then you can look at the big picture. But unfortunately, we have people who just jump straight to it.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah, they jump to the ET. They jump to the how does Kevin Reynolds say it? They jump to the less likely conclusion. Again, most cases are explained by mundane phenomenon. They just are. That's the way it is. So when you come across a case, a UFO case, it's likely explained by mundane phenomenon. That doesn't exclude the anomalous, the out of the ordinary, but it's not likely that it's that. So you whittle it down and say you've eliminated bugs in a windshield, helicopter, lightning, hoaxing, bad video photography. You eliminated misidentified comets or meteors or whatever. You eliminate all these possibilities. Whatever is left, however unlikely, sound like Sherlock Holmes, is a possibility, even alien spacecraft.
Yeah.
But still, that's not the likeliest explanation. It's one of the least likely, not impossible, but it suggests the idea, and I believe this, that alien visitation has occurred, but it's not a commonplace event. It's an extremely rare event, special and rare, out of the ordinary, overshadowed by other anomalous activity that is maybe more terrestrial in nature, and then a lot of unexplained everyday phenomena. But in the field, it's very polarized. If you question anything, they label you a debunker. They say, well, William doesn't believe in UFOs at all. He doesn't believe in alien visitation. And I tell them, I didn't say that. I simply said that it's not likely, but it's a possibility, which is distinctly different. But it's a step-by-step process. But, evidence is very difficult to come by because we don't have a ship we can tangibly touch and look at. We don't have a body. There's stories of it, but we don't know that. All we have is testimonials and a little bit of physical evidence that confirms an event took place, but nothing that proves ET theories. Not to this point. Maybe in the future, but nothing yet. Which doesn't mean it hasn't happened. It just means it hasn't been proven.
Exactly. And
yeah,
see, we talked before on this podcast. That's one of the reasons why I like Kevin Randall, is because, and maybe that's even on a subconscious level where I got the name for the podcast, because originally it was the UFOs want to tell you something, which is a mouthful. And I got that from a dream I had because I was in school at the time. I planned to stop doing UFO research. I wanted to focus on school.
Yeah.
And I have a dream, and it's a very obvious dream for those people out there who don't think so. Okay. My subconscious mind was telling me, you really like this subject, continue on with it. And in
Yeah.
the dream, I had a lady point up to a UFO and said, the UFOs want to tell you something. Some people would take that and be like, man, they were communicating with me. Me, I'm being very rational. I understand that I like the subject, and it's my subconscious telling me, don't just put it down. You have fun with it. But I think on a subconscious level, I picked up Abduction Enigma from his book, Abduction Enigma.
Yeah. Great book.
Oh, awesome book. I got it on my bookshelf.
It's not light, but it's a great book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of you out there might not like it. It's a little more skeptical, but it's where we got to be.
And it's logical. It's a logical approach. There are other circumstances that can explain alien abduction accounts,
Exactly.
not just actual alien abductions. But that is not people are not willing to embrace or even consider other possibilities other than the woo, the spectacular, and that's just not reality. Reality, the data doesn't lie. The data shows that the majority of this is mundane, with a percentage of bizarre anomalous events. To my mind, that's good enough, because if even one of those anomalous events is alien visitation, well, then the case is solved. That's fine. Even one is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that a skeptical, measured approach, a logical, grounded approach, is not popular at all in the field. And then you add Kevin's name to it. Okay, they really won't like it. So,
yeah, I don't get that, because he's a great researcher. And
yeah,
there's reasons to be skeptical. So now that I've mentioned that, I was 15 or 16 years old, and I have this dream, right? Outside of my apartment window, there's a blue light. And my whole entire body, I can't move, body's shaking, I can feel my teeth vibrating. It's really a weird sensation. And I can't move anything, so my eyes are darting around, and I feel somebody over here. I can glance over, see nothing. I'm scared as all hell, wake up, boom. Some would jump on that and say I had an alien abduction experience. Again, rationally, that's a sleep paralysis experience. Could I have jumped the gun and said that was? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But the skeptical mind goes, okay, this is a common phenomenon with everybody. I think everybody's had sleep paralysis at least once, or will, if I'm recalling correctly the statistics. We shouldn't just jump straight to the fantastic, and that is a huge issue. With my podcast, I definitely like to point that out.
Yeah. And that point of view is not an effort to debunk the possibilities.
No, not at all.
You're simply stating that logically, rationally, a lot of these accounts are explained by earthly, terrestrial, everyday occurrences. That does not discount the possibility of alien visitation or abduction. It's just stating the facts that a good majority of these cases are explained by things that are non-alien in form. But people want the either or. They want to believe everything or nothing. You know, a friend of mine, flute friend, said debunkers and true believers are the same people, because they believe everything or nothing. And the data doesn't support that. The data is somewhere in the middle. You know, this idea that everything is mundane, there's no alien visitation, makes no sense. Just as thinking that everything's alien, none of this is every day, doesn't make any sense either. It's somewhere in the middle. But true believers they double down. They double down. They want to believe what they believe, no matter what the data says, and that just doesn't get us anywhere. Not anywhere. So your statement is logical, rational. I found nothing negative about it at all. It's very objective. Yeah.
Well, see, I'll throw you one more. So I think I was like 20 at this point, and I had been watching a lot of Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. So this is fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Prior to that, I hadn't watched a whole lot. I had seen some UFO stuff, but not a lot. I wasn't
Yeah.
into it. But Ancient Aliens came out, and boom, I was into it. I think a lot of people were. So I'm sleeping one night, and this is a dream. I immediately pop up out of my dream, still dreaming, by the way. I run to the window. I look out the blinds. There is a probably, sedan sized triangular UFO landed on the ground. And up the sidewalk, I see a white figure walking up to the front door. So I fling the front door open and I make a tackle move, and everything just goes black. Sleep paralysis dream. I mean, I won't jump the gun and say I'm abducted. Even in a case like that where I seen the face of an alien, my mind was already interested in that because of what I had been watching. So did that show influence my perceptions? That's absolutely a possibility.
Possibility, sure, possibly, absolutely.
So, see, that is exactly why I look at that skeptically, and I don't go, you know what? I was abducted that night by a sedan-sized UFO out front by a little white man with big black eyes. We just have to be more rational, and I run across so much where it's just not, and drives me nuts.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite. No, there's no reason why being rational and cautious does not discount the extraordinary.
Exactly.
You're just embracing the reality that the likelihood is the more likely explanations are mundane. That doesn't eliminate the possibility there might be actually aliens, but it's likely not. Not impossible, but it's likely not. I mean, it's logical. I mean, you have an event took place, you're a first-hand witness, and you can't identify because of what the data shows. There's likely nothing out of the ordinary, but not impossible. So, a measured, skeptical look, it makes sense instead of just embracing something when you have no point of view. You don't know if it's real or not. You don't know if it's aliens. Might have been, likely not, but you don't know. But the firm declarations, of it's aliens, without any investigation having been done, come on, that's not credible at all. No, it's not defensible.
And I took such an odd turn because I used to be, like I told you earlier, I used to be that guy where I would be like, you know what? And even on that case, I was like, you know what? I seem to have been abducted. And then my mind kind of started to do research, and I started to focus, and I went, you know what? More than likely, I probably wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's just things like that. Like we have to try a little harder. And I think we also have to try a little harder for evidence as well.
Yes. Yeah, we have 80 years of stories. That's what we go. Let's be honest. We have 80 years of stories. Very little documentation. What do we have documents? We have the Halt memo. MJ12, in my opinion, is nonsense. Other documentation didn't hold up under scrutiny. So we have very little documentation. We have a little bit of physical evidence. You have some from Socorro, Delphos, Rendlesham Forest that confirm events took place, but does any of that evidence prove the ET theory? No. It's anomalous, but it's a big step. But the vast majority of this stuff is just stories. And a lot of it is credible stories from firsthand, intelligent, qualified witnesses. But you can't prove the case just on stories. We need a piece of technology, a body, something that cannot be refuted, that makes the case open and shut. We don't have that then. So, being that we've had 80 years of stories, we need to move past that. We need to increase the standard of evidence to gather more than just more testimony. We have enough of that. You and I agree. We both agree alien visitation has taken place.
Yes.
The anecdotal testimony proves that. But in a court of law, we need more than just that. We need something tangible to move it further. And we don't have that yet, but we need that.
Well, you see, some would jump straight from there and say, well, okay, What about alien implants? Now, me personally, I don't find that good enough, and I'll tell you exactly why. To my knowledge, and I have the book over there by Dr. Roger Lear, that hasn't been conclusively proven to be anything anomalous. But then you have somebody like Daryl Sims, who has an entire case full of alleged implants.
Yeah.
And you notice that with those, and I'm not trying to call him out and say, like he's faking it or whatever, but you notice within that there's so many different types. So let's say we got a triangular one over here, we got a bunch of BBs over here, we got a T right here. Dude, if you've got all that stuff, how is none of it proven?
Agreed. Yeah, it's I've yet to see. I mean, where's the document? Where were these examinations undertaken? What facility? What experts? What scientific experts looked at this stuff to determine it was alien technology? Where is that? There's nowhere. The implants have been recovered, but have any of them been proven to be alien in nature? Not to my mind. So how can you call them alien implants? They're unexplained recoveries, but implants, even the term implants, suggests they were placed there by some intelligence. If we don't know that, then they're simply recovered unknown nodules from the body. We don't know they're implants at all. We don't even know if they're alien at all. So yeah, that's not good enough. No.
Yeah, it's
Again,
not
that's
good
not
enough for me
discounting the
either.
possibility, but it's unproven yet.
Exactly. Like you just said, it doesn't discard the possibility, and which is why I'm trying not to bag him too much, but it's like, dude, you got little BB shaped ones as an example. You have to have some kind of evidence to tell me that somebody didn't just put BBs up their nose. Now, it's not likely that, everybody's going to do that, but you will run into people who will do that.
Sure, they will. Yeah.
And
Get notoriety, absolutely. Yeah.
I need some kind of evidence telling me this is some kind of foreign object.
Yeah.
People
do some weird things. Just watch the news. People do some bizarre things for attention. Putting a BB up your nose, pretty mundane in that realm. So yeah, people do things all the time for attention. So the idea that somebody might do that and claim to have been abducted and is recovered by some researcher in the field, and they say it was an alien implant. Yeah, Mr. Sims carries that case around wherever he goes. And where's the document? Where's the medical or scientific documentation to prove they're alien? He never brings it up. He never puts forth that. It never comes to light. No. Well, then I don't believe your claims then. Sorry.
No, he doesn't. And that's one of my big issues, is that's the alien hunter. So therefore, he should have some kind of thorough evidence of aliens. Now, I get it. Okay. Most people who believe they were abducted actually believe it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I know he claims to be an abductee as well. But just because you have the experience doesn't mean that you're not being thorough enough. You got to have something more than a case full of odd objects, which he's been called out for before, and then claim yourself to be the alien hunter, which, in itself drives me nuts.
Isn't he's retired law enforcement, isn't he?
Yeah.
As I recall. So that's disappointing. A position of integrity, or should have integrity, and now he's self-promoting. It's kind of disappointing. I'll be disappointed if I knew of a U.S. Marshal who all of a sudden was claiming to be an abductee, carrying out a bag of metal, claiming they're, it's disappointing. But I think it's just nonsense. But
it's quite disappointing, because if he brought that up to somebody like Dr. Michael Shermer, you know what? I know people don't like him. I actually like Michael Shermer a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
I am. Yeah, I am too. Yep. Yeah.
He's a very intelligent, nice guy. I think if you brought some of those to him, he'd probably do the test or find a way to get some done.
Sure, he would. And show the documentation. Show the evidence, show the procedures that were undertaken to make that determination. Yeah, it's in the same way I like Neil deGrasse Tyson because he asks regular questions. Where's the evidence? A scientist wants evidence, and I have friends in the field that hate him. They say, I can't stand Tyson. Okay, you don't like him? You know one way to shut him up? Show him the evidence. Never happens.
Exactly.
You can't complain about that. He's asking regular questions. We should all be asking, where's the evidence? Beyond stories. And he makes the same argument that Kevin Randall does. There's 8 billion of us. There's about 6 billion iPhones on the planet. Where's the irrefutable photographic evidence of UFOs? Where's the videos? Everybody has a video recorder in their hand. You would think you would have multiple witnesses taking pictures of the same craft in the sky from different locations. You would have that random chance, you would have that at least once. You don't have that. And instead, you have fuzzy video, hoax videos on YouTube. But in the field, that's good enough. Fuzzy video is enough in the field to declare light ships for the Pleiades.
Exactly.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I hearken back to thinking of a Las Vegas UFO video that I saw recently.
No.
We may be thinking of the same one. I'm not even going to refer to the one where the cops
the one
got
from this
called.
year?
I think so. Or
Okay.
the red light in the sky.
Yeah.
So it's got
Yep.
multiple angles. I think probably like 4 cameras, maybe.
I think so.
Something
Just
like
4.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if it was extremely anomalous, you think more people would have recorded that.
Yeah. And that's a common sense approach. Yeah.
And
Something weird in the sky, everyone's going to look up.
I think
Everybody.
was it Mick West that disproved that was an actual
UFO? Yeah. Another guy who's not liked.
Well, I'll tell you what, I like him.
That's 2 of us. He's vilified the field, but he asks logical questions. Nothing wrong with that. No.
That's what I really enjoy. Is a good researcher is somebody who does ask logical questions and looks at it logically. We can't just jump straight to it because that's how people get fooled.
Yeah. I recall, I'm sorry to interrupt, I recall later in life, I forgot what book it appears in. I think it may be The UFO Experience by Alan Hynek, his first book. He comments about later in his career in the 60s, by the time Socorro happened after that, when a UFO case came across his desk, he would attempt to disprove it, to try to debunk it. If he could not do that, then he had something. That's a good approach. Try to disprove the case. If it doesn't hold up under scrutiny, then you have something. But if it falls apart, well, then it was just nonsense.
I've actually said that before on this podcast. That's what you have to do. I hold Dr. Alan Hynek in high regard because
that's 2 of us. Yeah.
He never would jump the gun and be like, "Oh my God, you saw a UFO." He would be like, "Hey, please get me the report." Because then he would go and check, like with the airport. Many people don't know. You can call up your airport and find out what was in the sky at the time.
Yeah.
Starlink satellite, same thing. You can do these things on your own. You don't.
Yeah, outstanding gentleman. Yeah, great researcher. And like anybody else, made mistakes like any human being would do, but never lost sight of the fact that, again, the majority of the stuff is nonsense, but there's a core quality evidence that suggests anomalous stuff going on. So, after he passed away in '86, that was a big loss for the field. So,
yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I think
are we running out of time?
Yeah, we're running out of time. So I think we're going to end it here.
Okay.
I'd love to have you on again if you'd like.
I'm at your service. You just reach out to me. You got my email. Whenever you need me, I'm available for you. Not to worry.
Absolutely.
I'm semi-retired. I have a lot of time on my hands, so it's all good. So, no.
Well, I will absolutely reach out to you again because I enjoyed our conversation. I think you do great work. I'm going to promote you because I think you need that. And what I mean by that is good researchers don't get enough credit nowadays, and I appreciate it. Personally, I appreciate it.
Good researchers tend to be not popular. So they're ignored, they're not promoted, their efforts they're not known to the public. The public knows the celebrities. The public knows the researchers, but not the dogged workers in the field. And that hurts the entire topic. So I appreciate your support. You're very kind. Very kind.
Absolutely, man. And I will continue to share your articles on my page because I like them that much. I know my listeners enjoy it. So they're really going to love this talk. Yeah, I want to invite you on again. So I'm probably going to be reaching out to you again because
Oh, please do. Yeah, I'll be looking at your stuff on YouTube, trying to share on my page too. Yeah, it's just it's not promotion. It's just self awareness. You're sharing quality content on your platforms. That's the only good thing. And we have a problem with false content being shared. Well, then we need to fight against that by sharing quality content to counterbalance the nonsense. So makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to let you go, William. I
Okay,
really
my friend.
appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll definitely have you on again.
You got it, man. Be safe. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. See you later.